So, kiểu hôm nay ngày mùng 6, hôm nay là buổi thứ tư live rồi. Thì cái gì này? YouTube not receive, mạng có vấn đề à? Mạng của mình hơi có vấn đề thì phải. Rồi kệ đi. Drop. Ok, kệ đi. Hôm nay là mùng 6 à? Mùng 8. Mùng 8 à? Mùng 8 tháng 4. Hôm nay là buổi thứ tư rồi. Thì hôm nay mình sẽ xem một cái clip về thương lượng thương thảo. Clip này thì trước mình cũng xem một lần rồi nhưng mà nó không tập trung cho lắm, và lý do mình muốn xem lại bởi vì là mình nhận thấy là cái khả năng gọi là thương lượng hay thương thảo, thương thuyết của mình ấy, nó khá là kém. Mình nghĩ là cần rất nhiều thời gian nữa để nó cải tiến hơn. Thì nhưng mà dù như vậy thì vẫn phải bắt đầu. Là hôm nay là một clip của Lex Fridman, một lần nữa Lex Fridman. Ok, chuyển màn này, tắt nhạc nền đi này. Good. Vì cái clip này khá dài, 2 tiếng cơ, 2 tiếng 10 phút cơ, và mình sẽ cố gắng không tua nhanh nhiều quá, chắc mình để 1.1 hoặc là 1.2 thôi. Có nghĩa là cái clip này mình sẽ chia làm hai buổi, hôm nay xem một nửa và vào thứ tư xem một nửa. Rồi, bắt đầu.
In the kidnap business, we used to get asked by FBI lead to beg, so talking everything.
The following
Bỏ
is
qua
conversation
intro
with
đi.
Chris Voss, former FBI hostage and crisis negotiator, and author of Never Split the Difference: Negotiating as if your life depended on it. This is the Lex Fridman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Chris Voss. What is it like negotiating for a hostage with a kidnapper? What is the toughest part of that process?
The toughest part is if it looks bad from the beginning, and you got to engage in a process anyway.
What are the factors that make it bad? What that makes you nervous? That if you were to observe a situation where there's a general negotiation or it's a hostage negotiation, what makes you think that this is going to be difficult?
If they want to make it look like they're negotiating, but they're not. Like in the 2004 time frame, Al-Qaeda in Iraq was executing people on camera for the publicity, and they wanted to make it look like they were negotiating. So they'd come on and they say, if you don't get all the women out of Iraqi women out of the jails in Iraq in 72 hours, we're going to kill a hostage. That was one of the demands in one of the cases in that time frame. Now, first of all, even if we'd have been willing, the U.S. government, the coalition would have been willing to do that, it wouldn't have been able to happen in 72 hours. So is it an impossible ask from the beginning? And so then that looks really bad. Like they're trying to make it look like they're talking reasonably, but they're not. So your hostage is in bad shape there. If they've made a demand that you just, even if you wanted to do, you couldn't do. So then what makes that very difficult is, in kidnappings especially, you're working with family members, you're coaching people. Bad guys are in touch with family members, or if they're not directly in touch with family members, the other thing that Al-Qaeda was doing at that time was they didn't give us a way to talk to them. They're making statements in the media, but then not leaving their phone number, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's one more thing. Like they're intentionally blocking you. They're asking you to do something you can't do. They're not giving you a way to talk to them. So you got to get with the family and discuss with the family how you're going to approach things. Now, the family definitely wants to know, is this going to help? There's a bunch of cases like that in that time frame. And you got to be honest with them. It's a long shot. our chances here are slim and none. And when it's slim and none, I'll take slim, but it's still very, very slim. And there were a number of people that were killed in that time frame before the tide finally got turned, and it was hard dealing with the families at the time.
Can you negotiate in public versus like a direct channel in private?
Oh yeah, bad guys pick the media. They're making statements in the media, so and that's a big clue. Their channel of choice tells you an awful lot. And if they're choosing the media, then that means there's people they're trying to appeal to. That means, in their view, there's such a thing as good media. So if there's good media, there's bad media. How do you make it bad? And we made it bad for them. It just, unfortunately, it had to go through a number of iterations before they got the message and quit.
In that negotiation, do you think about the value of human life? Is there a dollar figure? Is there how do you quantify the value of human life?
Yeah, that's it's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. So that was the first lesson on any hostage negotiation, really any negotiation. Like, it doesn't matter what it is to you; it matters what it is to the other side. One of the things, especially in your conversation I listened to with Andrew. By the way, you guys, another thing I really liked about that conversation. First of all, I think the world of him.
Yeah. Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman, and you released it on my birthday. I appreciate that. So it's a nice birthday
Tried to
present
time
to me.
it perfectly just for you. Yeah.
Yeah, nice job. Thank you. But empathy is in the eye of the beholder. In every negotiation, whether it's over a car, a house, collaboration in your company with the bad guys. How does the other side see it? Now, the nice thing about kidnapping for ransom, if there's an actual ransom demand, it's an actual demand, is it's a mercenary's business. They're going to take what they could get. And they tend to be really good at figuring out how much money somebody has. So, and again, I'll keep drawing business analogies. You're looking for a job with an employer.
Cái mic này nó vấn đề gì ta? Nó nhảy suốt ta. Đừng nhảy đâu mic. Tao có nói gì đâu mà sao mày nhảy ghê vậy? Khó chịu nhỉ? Cái mic này nó vấn đề gì ta? Nó nhảy suốt ta. Ok. Mặc dù là mình thấy nó nhảy nhưng mà có vẻ như chất lượng vẫn ok. Hứa ngày mai sẽ đi mua một viên pin mới. Ok, quay lại đây. Quay lại đi. Quay lại đây. Negotiation.
There's a market price of the job, and then there's what the employer can pay you. Now, maybe the market price of the job market's $150,000. Employer can pay you $120,000, but it's a great job. You know, we were talking about Elon a minute ago. Like, I'd work minimum wage to follow him around. You know, that would be worth it. What are the value other than the dollars? And how hard is it to get the dollars? And how quickly can you get to them? These are all things that the bad guys are good in kidnapping, are good at figuring out. So the value of a human life to them is going to be, what can they get? A crazy thing in the kidnap business. We used to get asked by FBI leadership, when is this going to be over? And it would be when the bad guys feel like they've gotten everything they can. Now, dissecting that statement, you're talking about when they feel like they got everything they can. So the key to kidnapping negotiations are the feelings of the bad guys. We're talking about feelings, kidnappers' feelings, which drives everything. Doesn't matter what human endeavor it is.
So it's not reason, it's emotion.
There's no such thing as reason.
I should say, for a little bit of context, I just talked yesterday with a guy named Sam Harris.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Sam, but Sam, and because I was preparing for a conversation with you, I talked to him about empathy versus reason, and he lands heavily on reason.
Yeah.
Empathy is somewhere between useless and erroneous and leads you astray and is not effective. That reason is the only way forward.
Well, let's draw some fine lines there. And the two fine lines I would draw is first, what is your definition of empathy? And then secondly, how do people actually make up their minds? And I'm going to flip it. I'm going to go with how people make up their minds. You make up your mind based on what you care about. Period. That makes reason emotion based.
Yeah.
What do you care about? You start with what you care about. You see some guy swimming out off the coast of the ocean, and you see a shark coming up behind him. Who are you cheering for? If it's Adolf Hitler out there, you're cheering for the shark. You might actually feel bad for the shark because it's gonna taste bad. Who do you care about?
You mean the human will taste bad?
Hôm nay mạng có vấn đề. Drop nhiều quá ta. Mạng có vấn đề. Này.
Tastes bad.
Yeah, if he eats Adolf Hitler, it's gonna leave a bad taste in your mouth, even if you're a shark. So you're making up your mind on every circumstances based on what you care about.
Yeah.
So then what does that do to reason? Your reason is based on what you care about from the beginning. Now then empathy. If you define it as sympathy, which it was never meant to be sympathy, ever. Etymology, I think is the word. I keep getting etymology and entomology mixed up. Etymology being where words came from, the origin. Entomology being bugs.
Got it.
Right? So I like etymology. Where did something come from? Also like entomology. Anyway, etymology. My understanding from my research, the original definition of empathy was an interpretation of a German word where people were trying to figure out what the artist was trying to convey. It was about assessing art. And so it was always about understanding where somebody was coming from, but not sharing necessarily that same thing. So then when I was with the FBI and I first started collaborating with Harvard, Bob Mnookin wrote a book, Beyond Winning. Second chapter is the tension between empathy and assertiveness. Still the best chapter on empathy I've ever read anywhere. And Bob writes in his book, Bob was the head of the program on negotiation. He's also agreed to be interviewed for a documentary that's about me and my company that hasn't been released yet, but it should be released sometime this year.
What's the name of the documentary?
Tactical Empathy.
Good name.
Rồi, tôi xem cái mic này nó có bị làm sao nữa không. Mic. Mic. Ok, mic ok đúng không? Mic không sao này, mic ngon nè. Ok, mic ok đúng không? Mic không sao này, mic ngon nè. Ok, mic ok đúng không?
So Bob's definition of empathy said not agreeing or even liking the other side. Don't even got to like them. Don't got to agree with them. Just straight understanding where they're coming from and articulating it, which requires no agreement whatsoever. That becomes a very powerful tool, like ridiculously powerful. And if sympathy or compassion or agreement are not included, you can be empathic with anybody. I was thinking about this when I was getting ready to sit down and talk to you, because you use the word empathy a lot. Putin. I can be empathic with Putin. Easy. It's easy. I don't agree with where he's coming from. I don't. Easy. It's easy. I don't agree with where he's coming from. I don't agree with his methodology. Early on the Ukraine-Russian war, I saw an article that was very dismissive of Russia that said Russia's basically Europe's gas station. And I thought, all right, so if you're in charge and the way you feed your people is via an industry that the entire world is trying to quit, the whole world is trying to get out of fossil fuels. If that's how you feed your people, if you don't come up with an answer to that, the people that you've taken a responsibility for are going to die alone in the cold and the dark. They're going to freeze and they're going to die. All right, so that doesn't mean that I agree with where he's coming from or any of his means. But how does this guy see things in his distorted world? You're never going to get through to somebody like that in a conversation unless you can demonstrate to them you understand where they're coming from, whether or not you agree. Early 90s, last century. I'm a last century guy. I'm an old dude. Refer to myself as a last century guy. Also a deeply flawed human.
Yeah.
So, terrorist case, New York City, civilian court. Terrorism does not have to be tried in military tribunals. That's a very bad idea. It was always bad. The FBI was always against it. I'm getting ready. We have Muslims testifying in open court against a legitimate Muslim cleric. The guy that was on trial had the credentials as a legitimate Muslim cleric. The people that were testifying against him didn't think he should be advocating murder of innocent people. We'd sit down with them, Arab Muslims, Egyptians mostly. And I would say to them, you believe that there's been a succession of American governments for the last 200 years that are anti-Islamic. And they'd shake their head and go, yeah. And that'd be the start of the conversation. That's empathy. You believe this to be the case. I never said I agreed. I never said I disagreed. But I showed them that I wasn't afraid of their beliefs. I was so unafraid of them that I was willing to just state them and not disagree or contradict, because I would say that and then I'd shut up and let them react. And I never had to say, here's why you're wrong. I never gave my point of view. Every single one of them that testified. That's empathy, not agreeing with where the other side is coming from. I'm not sure how Sam would define it, but common vernacular is it's sympathy and it's compassion. And that's when it becomes useless.
And there's a gray area, maybe you can comment on it, is sometimes a drop of compassion helps make that empathy more effective in the conversation. So you just saying you believe X doesn't quite form as strong of a bond with the other person.
You're imagining it doesn't.
Maybe you're right. Yes, I'm imagining it doesn't. I'm imagining you need to show that you're on the same side. That you need to signal a little bit about your actual beliefs, at least in that moment, even if that signaling is not as deep as it sounds. But at first, basically patting the person on the back and saying, we're on the same side, brother.
That's what most people, when they're really learning the concept, that's the basic human reaction.
Yeah.
And in application, especially in highly adversarial situations, like I need a regular guy, Muslim, but how's that guy gonna say buy it if I dude, I'm on your side. I've been there. I feel you. No. People get conned by that so much. Like if we're on opposite sides of the table and I try to act like I'm not on the opposite side of the table, that makes me disingenuous. So I would rather be honest. My currency is integrity. And at some point in time, if you go like, you know where I'm coming from? My answer is going to be like, look, I can agree on maybe where we're going. But if we're talking about, am I on your side now? As a human being, I want to see you survive and thrive, not at my expense. I think the world is full of opportunity. I'm optimistic. I got more than enough reason for saying that. There's enough here for both of us. So I got no problem with you getting yours. Just don't take it out of my hide. And I'm going to be honest about it. about both of those things. I'm not interested in you taking it out of my hide. I think there's plenty here for both of us. Now, I don't need to be on your side, except in a human sense. But I don't. Do I have to side with you over the war? No. Or the how we're distributing the stock, or how much I get paid, or how much you make off this car. I think people. My experience as a layman is that empathy's not got a downside. That you don't need me to act like I'm on your side for us to make a great deal.
Great deal. Well, we'll talk about two things: a great deal and a great conversation.
Right.
They're often going to be the same thing, but at times they're going to be different. And you mentioned Vladimir Putin. There is some Zoom level at which you do want to say we're on the same side. You said the human level. It's possible to say, kind of zoom out and say that we're all in this together, not we Slavic people, we Europeans, but we human beings.
We're the same planet.
Same planet.
Right. Yeah. Several years ago, and his name has evidently been mud now, but he was very nice to me, lawyer here in town named Tom Girardi. And no shortage of bad reporting on him now. I have absolutely no idea if any of it's true. I do know that in my interaction with him, he was always a gentleman to me and was very generous. When he'd get into conversations with people, he'd always say, like, let's look at 10 years from now, where we could both be in a phenomenal place together. Mm-hmm. Now let's work our way back from there.
That's a good line.
Yeah. And then, I saw him do it in simulations. I was teaching at USC. We were at a function together. And a gentleman at the time told me that who he was, and he was really influential. So I walked up to the guy cold, and I said, hey, how about coming and talking to my class at USC? He didn't know me.
Chờ xíu đổi cái tai nghe này. Cái tai nghe này nó hơi ù, khiến mình hơi bị ù tai. Okay. Whew. Let's go.
Oh, me, other than the fact that we had a mutual acquaintance, and he graciously consented to come in. And he said, what do you want me to talk about? And I said, look, dude, just from your success here, it doesn't matter what you talk about. Either I'm going to agree or I'm going to disagree, or I'm going to learn from it. My students are going to learn from it. So students want to role play with him. They dispute, let's do a negotiation. Every single time he'd go to pick a point in the future where we're both happy 10 years, 20 years from now, and let's work our way back. Now, hostage negotiator, same thing. I call into a bank. Bad guy picks up on the phone. And I'm going to say, I want you to live. I want to see you survive this. Whatever else goes with that. Let's pick a point in the future that we're both good with. And then we work our way back. And people make also, we were talking before about emotion and what you care about. People make their decisions based on their vision of the future. Like without question. I think there's a Hindu temple in the United States has been being assembled the same way that the Hindu temples were in India 1,000 years ago, by hand, volunteers, by hand. These people are knocking themselves out for a place in paradise, a vision of the future. What you will go through today, if the future portends what you want, you'll go through incredible things today. So it's a vision of the future.
So you have to try to paint a vision of the future that the person you're negotiating with will like. Which is tough to do.
Let's find out what their vision of the future is, and then remove yourself as a threat.
Sure.
If we can collaborate together at all, if you think that I could do anything at all to help you to that point, and, integrity is my currency, I'm not going to lie to you, which gets back before that I lied to you about whether or not I'm on your side. Right now, not at the moment, we're on opposite sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. That's not going to stop us from being together in the future. Inside, you're going to say, wow, well, you didn't lie to me about today. Maybe you won't lie to me about tomorrow.
So going back to world leaders, for example, whether it's Volodymyr Zelensky or Vladimir Putin, You don't think it closes off their mind to show that you have a different opinion?
Depending upon when you showed it. Are you arguing from the beginning, or are you displaying understanding from the beginning? I don't think it stops you from being adversarial. That was the thing about Mnookin's the chapter in his book, the tension between empathy and assertiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading that name of the chapter, thinking like, in my business there is no tension. And then I got into it, and I thought, this is a red herring. He's drawing people in because his entire chapter is that empathy puts you in a position to assert, and that there is no tension. It's a sequencing issue. And that's why, again, I think it was written for lawyers.
Yeah, sequencing issue. The timing is everything. So you emphasize the importance of, in terms of sequencing and priority, of listening, of truly listening
Right.
to the other person.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? That was a bad joke.
I
Sorry.
forgot.
Good joke. Ok. Phần vừa rồi mình hơi mất tập trung một chút. Cái mình rút ra được đó là về cơ bản là đừng có cố gắng mà thể hiện là mình hiểu, mình với họ là một bên. Họ ở đây là người mà đối diện với mình, người mà mình đang gọi là gì, thương thảo với, thương lượng với. Đơn giản là mình hãy nói sự thật, nói sự thật để họ ít nhất họ hiểu được là mình đang trung thực với họ. Và khi mình trung thực với họ rồi thì họ có thể tin tưởng vào mình. Bây giờ sẽ đến cái phần how to listen.
Your timing is just perfect.
Perfect.
How do you listen? How do you truly listen to another human being? How do you notice them? How do you really hear them?
I always hated the term active listening. If anything, it's proactive. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you start trying to anticipate where somebody's going, you're dialed in more. Because trying to anticipate anything.
Ông ấy không thích active listening mà thích proactive, chủ động. Thế còn active listening là gì?
Proactive. And as soon as you start trying to anticipate where somebody's going, you're dialed in more. Because along the way, either you're congratulating yourself for being right, or when suddenly they say something that surprises you, you really notice it. Like, that's not what I expected. You're dialed in, you're listening. So it's proactive. And then one of the reasons, we named the book Tactical Empathy. Name the book Never Split the Difference, but we're talking about tactical empathy. Mm-hmm. Calibrated emotional intelligence. What's it calibrated by? First, it was experience as hostage negotiators, and we've come to find out that our experience as hostage negotiators is backed up by neuroscience. Another reason why I listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast all the time. Heavy on the neuroscience. And so then emotional intelligence calibrated by what we know about neuroscience. What do we know about neuroscience? And I'll talk about it from a layman's perspective, and to even say we is an arrogant thing, human beings. I didn't do the research. I'm scooping up as much of it as I can as a layman. The brain's largely negative. I think there's ample evidence. People would argue with you as to what the wiring is and what does what, and the limbic system and all of that. But the brain is basically 75% negative. As a layman, I make that contention. Number one. Number two, the best way to deactivate negativity is by calling it out. And I could say, look, I don't want you to be offended by what I'm getting ready to say. That's a denial. I don't want you to be offended by.
I don't want you to be offended about what I'm about to say.
About what I'm getting ready to say.
I'm getting ready to say.
That's a denial.
Có nghĩa là trước khi nói một cái gì đấy gọi là tiêu cực ấy, thì mình rào trước. Bởi vì khi mà mình rào trước, theo mình hiểu, ở đây có nghĩa là sẽ cái não của mình này, bởi vì ông này Ông ấy có nói là ông ấy tìm hiểu khá kỹ về cái việc, không phải tìm hiểu khá kỹ mà có tìm hiểu về phần não bộ, cách neuron hoạt động. Thì cái việc rào trước sẽ khiến cho người nghe
Guard is up, you're getting ready to get mad. If I say, what I'm getting ready to say is probably going to offend you. Now you relax a little bit, and you go,
có nghĩa là trước đấy thì từ
I could say, look,
lại.
I don't want negativities by calling it out. And I could say, look, I don't want you to be offended by what I'm getting ready to say. That's a denial. Your guard is up, you're getting ready to get mad.
You getting ready to get mad, có nghĩa là rào nó lại và khiến là bắt đầu mọi thứ nó sẽ xấu đi.
If I say,
nhưng mà nếu mà tôi nói là cái mà tao chuẩn bị nói
what I'm getting ready to say is probably going to
thì chắc có thể là xúc phạm mày đấy.
offend you. Now you relax a little bit.
Và mày bắt đầu mình sẽ bình tĩnh một chút.
And you go, all right, what is it? And then I say it, whatever it is, and you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Sự kỳ vọng.
Because we knew from hostage negotiation by calling out the negativity, deactivate it, and then a number of neuroscience experiments have been done right and left by calling out negativity, deactivating the negative.
Có nghĩa là calling out negativity là chỉ ra cái điểm tiêu cực. Thì nó sẽ giúp cái điểm tiêu cực ấy nó bị triệt hạ. Hơi mình hiểu nhưng mà mình hơi khó giải thích một chút. Ví dụ như mình phòng trước ấy, mình phòng trước, mình không rõ là hai cái ý trước và ý sau nó có bị ngược nhau không, nhưng mà theo mình hiểu cái tổng quan ấy là mình sẽ rào đón trước để cho người ta nghĩ là nó sẽ tệ đấy, để xem nào mày xem thử, để thử xem mày sẽ nói cái gì tệ nào. Nhưng mà khi mà mình nói ra thì họ sẽ bảo thực ra nó không tệ như họ nghĩ. Nên tự dưng lại cái điểm tiêu cực nó lại thành tích cực.
Calling out ahead of time, so like acknowledging that this is ahead of time, that this is going to hurt.
Have been when the negativity was inflicted, and then having the person that it was being inflicted upon simply identify it.
Just identify.
Yeah, what are you feeling? I'm angry, and the anger goes away.
Calling it out.
It's tough because I've had a few, and again we're dancing between things, but I've had a few conversations where anger arose in the guest I spoke with.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure identifying it. That's like leaning into it and going into the depths, because that's going to the depth psychological thing they're going through that I'm not sure I want to explore that iceberg with the little ship we got. You have to decide, do you want to avoid it or do you want to lean into it? It's a tough choice.
It's the elephant in the room.
Especially when I think that, and negotiation ultimately is looking for closure and resolution. I think general conversations like this is more exploring. There's not necessarily a goal. Like if I had to put a goal for this conversation, there's no real goal. It's curiously exploring ideas. So that gives you freedom to not call out the elephant. For a time, you could be like, all right, let's go to the next room, get a snack, and come back to the elephant.
Right. All right, so I'd make a tiny adjustment on the negotiation definition.
Sure.
Because you said, I think, seeking closure.
Closure là gì? Khép kín. Tìm kiếm sự khép kín là sao?
You used two words, and closure was one of them.
Goals, maybe another. Well, yeah. What is negotiation?
Well, I would say seeking collaboration, and because closure kind of puts a little bit of a finality to it, and the real problem in any negotiation is always implementation. That's why we say yes is nothing without how. And yes, at its very best, is only a temporary aspiration. It's aspirational. It's usually counterfeit. So if you're looking for,
It's a good line. Yes is usually counterfeit. It's aspirational without the how.
Yeah,
it's just a good line. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been working on it. I was practicing. In front of the mirror before I came in today.
Doing pretty good. You got a bright future ahead of you. You should write a book or something.
Yeah.
Your book is excellent, by the way.
Thanks. Appreciate that. What am I doing here anyway?
This on
Yeah.
Earth in general.
On you, with you.
I don't know. We're collaborating.
Why me though? Why'd you want to talk to me?
Why
I heard you speak in a few places. I was like, this is a fascinating human. I think on Clubhouse and different places, and
All right.
I listen to some YouTube stuff, and this is just you meet people that are interesting. That's what I love doing with this podcast is just exploring the mind of an interesting person. You notice people.
thanks,
Sometimes
yeah.
sometimes there's like a homeless person that's outside of 7-Eleven. I notice, who are you?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It doesn't like I don't look at the resumes and the credentials and stuff like that. It's just being able to notice a person.
As I've been leafing through the different choices of the podcast,
Sure.
the young lady that OnlyFans